You hear all about the AI revolution, right? Well, today we're talking about its biggest, kind of hidden problem, a massive energy crisis. But we're also going to look at this incredible, almost science fiction solution that, well, it basically swaps electricity for pure light. All right, let's just start with a number, 10%.
So, the Department of Energy is projecting that by 2030, something is going to eat up a full tenth of all the energy we produce on the entire planet. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. What in the world could possibly need that much juice?
Yep, AI and the data centers that run it. Those are the engines powering our modern world. The thing is, our appetite for bigger and smarter AI is just exploding. And the way we've been building computers, well, it's just not going to cut it anymore. It's becoming totally unsustainable. All right, so for our first section, let's really dig into this energy crisis. Why exactly are the computer chips powering all this AI hitting what is quite literally a physical wall? Okay, so for a long time, like decades, we had this amazing free lunch in computing. It was called Dennard scaling, and the deal was beautiful. Every time we shrunk down a transistor, it also used less power. It was pure magic. It's why our computers kept getting faster and faster without, melting a hole in our desks. But then around 2005, the magic just stopped. And that right there is the core problem for every single data center on the planet today. We can still cram more and more transistors onto a chip, no problem, but we can't make them use less power anymore. So what happens? You try to turn them all on at once, and the whole thing just gets way too hot. We've slammed right into a thermal wall. And the amount of heat we're talking about is just wow. An NVIDIA A100 chip, that's putting out about 450 watts of heat. Intel's latest, the Ponte Vecchio, a mind-boggling 600 watts. And this isn't just some engineering puzzle, right? This is a huge economic problem. To stop these things from melting, data centers have to resort to these extreme, super expensive cooling methods. We're talking water cooling as standard, or even dunking entire racks of servers into giant tubs of oil. It's a brute force solution, and it's making the cost of running these places and their carbon footprint skyrocket. So that brings us to a pretty radical idea. What if we could just sidestep this whole heat problem, like completely bypass it by changing the very physics of how we compute? Well, let's dive into the world of photonics. The basic idea here is actually pretty simple and kind of beautiful. See, right now, we compute by pushing electrons through tiny wires. That creates resistance, which creates heat. But photonic computing says, forget electrons. Let's use particles of light, photons, to do the math instead. And like Nick Harris, the CEO of Light Matter, says, it's a totally different kind of device. All those old rules, all those limitations we had with transistors, they just don't apply here. And this is where you start to see the first massive advantage. You know how computer speeds, clock speeds have been stuck at around, 3 gigahertz for like 20 years? Well, light operates at a frequency of about 193 terahertz. That's more than 50,000 times faster. Now, to be fair, you can't use all of that potential right away, but the sheer bandwidth available is just astronomical. Oh, but it gets even cooler. With light, you can use different colors, different wavelengths to do multiple calculations in the same tiny space at the same time. Think of it this way. Electrons are stuck on a single-lane country road. Light gives you a multi-lane superhighway. Use 2 colors, you just doubled your compute power. 16 colors, 16 times the power. And the best part? You're doing all of this without making the chip any bigger or, crucially, any hotter. Okay, so let's do a direct head-to-head comparison to really see why this is such a game changer. So here's the bottom line. Transistors rely on electrons. They've hit a wall on energy efficiency, and they pump out a ton of heat. Photonics, on the other hand, uses photons. They completely sidestep that energy scaling problem and generate almost no heat. It's a total paradigm shift that goes straight to the heart of that energy crisis we talked about at the beginning. Okay, this all sounds amazing on paper, right? But how in the world do you actually build a working chip that computes with light and can run the massive AI models we actually care about today? So one of the first giant roadblocks was precision. See, these photonic chips are analog by nature. Think of it like a dimmer switch instead of an on-off switch. But the big AI models, things like BERT or ResNet, they need really high numerical accuracy to work properly. And for the longest time, nobody could figure out how to make an analog light-based chip as precise as a digital electronic one. The big breakthrough was a really clever trick with the data. Instead of trying to make every single number perfectly precise, which is hard to do with light, they grouped numbers together into blocks. Then they just find the biggest number in that block and create one shared scale for the whole group. It's a bit of a mathematical shortcut, but it lets the analog chip do its work super efficiently while still giving you the high accuracy you need for top-tier AI. And this is the result. This is the big payoff right here. Take a look. A top-of-the-line NVIDIA A100 chip, an absolute beast for AI, burns through 450 watts. The light matter and Vise photonic processor doing similar work? Just 78 watts. I mean, that is a night and day difference. It's a truly game-changing drop in power consumption and, by extension, heat. And don't think for a second that this is some low-power, slow chip. No way. We're talking over 65 trillion operations a second, all packed into that tiny 78-watt power budget. It's really this amazing hybrid, using billions of transistors for the control stuff and a million photonic components to do all the heavy lifting math for AI. So, what does all this mean for the future, for AI, and for those huge, power-hungry data centers? Well, first off, this isn't going to replace all the computers we have now, not overnight. The best way to think about it is like when GPUs first came out. They didn't get rid of your main processor, your CPU, right? They worked with it to make graphics run way faster. These photonic processors are going to do the exact same thing, but for AI. They'll just slot into existing servers and act as these incredibly efficient AI accelerators. So for anyone who runs or worries about data centers, this is huge. Here are the big takeaways. First, your cooling costs are going to plummet. You can start moving away from those crazy, expensive oil baths. Second, you get way more computing power in the same amount of space. That's a huge deal for real estate. But the most important thing, really, is that this creates a sustainable path forward. It gives us a way to build the absolutely massive trillion-parameter AI models of the future without having to build a dozen new power plants to run them. It's about scaling AI without breaking our energy budget. Which really leaves us with one big question to think about. As our hunger for more and more powerful AI just keeps growing exponentially, is switching from electricity to light not just a cool option anymore, but maybe, just maybe, an absolute necessity?